would like to welcome you to the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. This academy is set up to enable you to practice your skills at home and become a black belt in surgical skills. This section is focused on your non-dominant hand. It's all very well being practiced with your dominant hand, but surgery is a two-handed practice, and we should not forget a non-dominant hand. There's very simple things that you can do as an aspiring surgeon to improve the skills of your non-dominant hand. Firstly, brush your teeth with a non-dominant hand. When you first start brushing your teeth with your left hand, you'll find this extremely difficult. But I guarantee you within 2 weeks, you will have mastered the skill. I will know if you haven't, because you'll turn up at work with halitosis. The other thing you can do is actually take your razor and now shave with your non-dominant hand. Again, I'll know that you're practicing and succeeding by the number of elastoplasts we find on your face. Another simple thing you can do to improve the function of your left hand is to swap your knife and fork over at the table. For those of you who use chopsticks, a challenge would be then to master the skill of chopsticks using your non-dominant hand. These are very simple daily activities that you can introduce now to improve the function of your left hand. We must remember surgery requires both hands, and they have to work interdependently for you to achieve that smooth, regular movement and lightness of touch that is required for a good outcome. So why not start now? There are two types of forceps. The tooth forceps literally have teeth at the bottom. In this case, there's one tooth one side going in between two teeth the other. These are sharp and can damage tissue, but are rather good at everting and holding tissue out the way. They are useful when stitching skin, but please do not grab the tissue with these, as they'll cause damage. These are called adkins. By contrast, the non-tooth forceps have got rows of fine teeth on one side interdigitating with a double row of fine teeth the other side, and these are crushing forceps. They're not going to damage the tissue. However, you'll see if you press hard, damage can result from crushing. When noticed in studies, while people focus on their dominant hand, the left dominant hand starts squeezing harder and harder and harder and actually crushes the tissue. Imagine what you're doing to the intima of a vessel or the mucosa of the bowel. In both cases, forceps can damage tissue, and it's important to learn lightness of touch. One other thing when holding a pair of forceps, please do not ever hold your forceps like solid servers. For those anatomists, you'll recognize that that movement is the intrinsic muscles of the hands, the lumbricals. But I think it's important to hold your forceps this way, such that the pulp of your fingers are actually operating the instrument. This is where the lightness of touch is coming from. I do not want to see the tips of the fingers grabbing the forceps like that. You'll lose that lightness of touch and you'll lose the proprioception. The instrument is held lightly in your hand and you're using the pulp of your fingers. So your first exercise to train your non-dominant hand is to pick up grains of rice. Now, your non-dominant hand will get better with practice over time. I've already suggested that you can shave and brush your teeth. This will help with this exercise. But very simply, put some rice on the table and use your forceps to pick up grains of rice and sort them into a pile. It's important that your movement is smooth and deliberate, and your forceps are not coming in making erratic movement. There are two ways of overcoming this. One is using your little finger as a stilt. I'm putting that on the table, and I can stabilize my hand and forearm movement with my little finger balanced on the table. This makes it easier for me to pick up the rice and sort into piles. The other way of supporting your forceps is to use an instrument, a bit like a sign writer using a fob. It's to stabilize it, but that's cheating really. You need to be able to learn to be able to pick up rice carefully and move it and sort it into piles. Let's make it a little bit more difficult. I'm now going to pick up the rice and put it in a plastic spoon. Not so easy, because if I grab it too hard or grab it incorrectly, you see that my rice will actually run around the table. And what I want to see from you with practice is deliberate movement. So, let's add to the complexity of this exercise. I now want you to actually pick up pieces of rice and put them in sequence into each of the straws. One at a time. What is good about this exercise, we can make this now more difficult. Somebody can call out different numbers from 1 to 4, and I need to pick up the rice one at a time and put it in the respective spoon. Now, to enable this exercise, I've actually pre-recorded a sequence of numbers. Let's see how we do.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 1, 2.
So, this exercise is rather fun. You can get a friend to call the numbers out, or record it on a tape recorder, and as you go, get faster and faster. What you need to be able to do is pick up the rice deliberately each time and put it accurately in the spoon. We can add increasing complexity to this very simple exercise. I've now put some black rice in amongst the regular rice. Your exercise now is to pick out each of those black grains of rice. I've had to actually paint the rice today, but you can buy black rice and mix it up. So the first thing in this exercise is to select out the black rice and pick it up and be able to sort it into spoons. And in fact, you can complicate it even further by calling out the numbers and saying black 1, white 2, black 3, black 4, and on each occasion picking up the respective bit of rice and putting it in the respected spoon. Well, let's make a non-dominant hand skill even more difficult. We need to do this if we want to progress through the belts of the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. Our exercise now is very simple, or you might think it is. We need to be able to pick up each grain of rice and now put them in to the end of a bit of straw sitting on the table. You can make this more fun each time by adding a time frame to it, or nominating a different color of rice. And each time you want to be able to pick up the rice and deliberately drop it in the end of the straw. You can make this exercise easier or harder by changing the diameter of the straw. But now we're going to add a totally new dimension. Take a look at this. Right. Well, we are building on the complexity of this non-dominant hand skill throughout our belts in the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. And one of the final tests is actually now using colored bendy straws. I don't know if you've used that game, Simon Says, which has different colors come up in sequence and you have to press the buttons in sequence. Well, I think this is the surgical equivalent for the non-dominant hand. In this exercise, I would like you to load each of these straws according to the color that is called out. This is extremely difficult, but it can be done with practice. You can add a level of complexity, again, by putting a different colored rice in there and calling out, for example, yellow, white, orange, white, black, purple. This exercise is made more difficult with very small straws. I therefore have to align my grain of rice carefully to ensure that it drops in and doesn't drop out. The final exercise in assessing your non-dominant hand skills is to watch you dissect. Now, dissection is another key skill in surgery. What I often see with trainees as they're concentrating on their dominant hand is that the left hand tends to drift and/or crush the tissue. This left hand and the forceps is simply there to retract the tissues and not crush. The important thing, as explained to you earlier, is that we'd like to see your right and left hand, or your dominant and non-dominant hand, working interdependently. It's important when focusing on your dominant hand to ensure that your non-dominant hand is not drifting or grabbing the tissues. And that is the final element of your non-dominant hand skill that I'd like to see in the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills.